My name is Logan Walsh. I am a member of this congregation, and one of the ways I serve it is as a worship associate. Today I am joined by one of our ministers, Reverend Kelly Asprith Jackson, and the worship team of Linda Warren, Drew Collins, and Daniel Carnes. Special welcome and thanks to our Meeting House Chorus for their contribution of time and talent this morning. At First Unitarian Society, we question boldly, listen humbly, grow spiritually, act courageously, and love unapologetically. If you are visiting us today, welcome. We are so very glad that you are here. If you would like more information about First Unitarian Society, please stop by the welcome table located in the Commons, just right around the corner there. We hope you will be able to stay and join us for coffee hour immediately after service, also in the Commons. For those connecting with us virtually today, we are glad you are with us as well. And we hope you will be able to take a moment and watch the announcement slides after today's service to learn about upcoming programs and activities. And now, I invite you to join me in a moment of silence to center ourselves and bring ourselves fully into this time as we join together once again in community. As we create and share sacred space together, let us reflect upon what brings us here. We have all come here for different reasons, from different decisions, faced different challenges, and shared different love. Yet all of our differences have led us to this space, right here, right now.
Some believe we are here for a greater purpose. Others hold fast to a claim of complete coincidence. Others still lie somewhere in between. There are so many differences and barriers between each individual. It would seem at times as though the odds were stacked against us, becoming one whole. As we believe different things, live and experience different things, and value and hate different things.
We are the children of God, the children of the earth, or fully grown adults here as a piece of the ongoing cycles of the universe, the children of the stars. We all have different definitions and explanations to who or what and why we are.
Perhaps all are right. Our revelation is not sealed. Despite all that is different, there is one thing that is certainly the same. Somehow, we are all right here, right now.
We are growing and changing and discovering all here, all together, sharing the same sacred space we have shared for years throughout generations, constantly evolving, constantly changing.
Let us continue. Let us change and struggle together. Let us adapt together. Let us grow together. Let us worship together. And now I invite you to rise in all the ways that we do and join me in the words of aspiration for the kindling of our chalice. My apologies for the brightness of the screen. It's that time of year, folks. The world stole an hour from us and it makes it hard to read. But don't worry, do your best. Let's read together. May this flame, symbol of transformation since time began, fire our curiosity, strengthen our wills, and sustain our courage as we seek what is good within and around us. Great job under difficult circumstances. Now, I invite you to turn to those around you and greet each other with signs of love and peace. Well, I would like to invite forward at this time anybody who would like to come up here and join me. Who? Is that an owl? Oh, very nice. Oh. And an elephant? We got some animal friends here today. Well, good morning. Come on down. Yeah. Thanks for coming down. So sometimes I like to start out with a question for you. But I only like to ask, I think questions are for learning new things. So I only like to ask questions if there's more than one right answer or if I don't know the answer. And so I'm not going to start with a question today because instead I'm going to start with a fact. So the fact is that I'm going to share with you at the outset is that the Earth, the planet that we are on, revolves around the sun. Okay, all right, there's an astronomer out there somewhere who's going to be real pedantic about it and be like, well, actually, the way that it works is that technically the sun and the Earth revolve around a shared point that's way closer to the sun than it is to the Earth. But the shorthand version is the Earth revolves around the sun. There we go, yes. How does the Earth go around the sun? Well, it has to do with gravity, and that's about where my explanation is going to stop. So, because I am not actually the person who is best suited to teach you that lesson, consult your local library. There's a lot of opportunities to learn about astronomy. Yes? Oh. You want to go by the campfire? Well, I think the thing that I can see, the connection between the Earth revolving around the sun and you and a campfire, the connection I can see there is that our distance from the sun is very important to life on Earth. Because if our planet were closer to the sun, it would be too hot. And if our planet were further away, it would be too cold. And we're in just the right place. What astronomers call the Goldilocks zone. Isn't that a fun technical term? Yeah. You're too hot. I noticed that you're wearing a coat. I'm just observing that, not telling you what to do. So here's why I shared this. Because although I am in a position to tell you this, and you probably already knew it anyway, for many years, for a lot of human history, most people did not think that. That was not the common understanding, the most common understanding. They thought that the sun traveled around the Earth, yes. And the moon, yes. In fact, all of the different things in the sky, all the stars, all the planets, the idea was that they traveled around the Earth, yes. You have friends? I'm glad. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you know, the most important thing is to like yourself. I'll get your hand in just 1 second. So, not only was that generally considered to be the truth by most people, most places in time, up until only a few centuries ago, but there were lots of places in time where it wasn't just like that was the popular opinion, that was what everybody thought. It was so important to the people in charge in those places that everybody should think that the sun revolves around the Earth, that if you thought differently, you could get in a lot of trouble. Yeah, right? I agree. Yes. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Yes, I can adjust my glasses too. Yeah, there are a number of competing, complicated explanations for how these things revolved around the Earth, whether they were individual objects or they were like a big ball that we were inside of and the ball turned, or multiple competing balls with having, like some of the stars are on this ball, but the ball is transparent and then there's more balls outside, like very intricate. If you pay attention to the lights in the sky, if you pay a lot of attention to them, actually, eventually, it becomes easier to imagine the universe, well, our solar system at least, arranged with the sun at the center and the Earth moving around, than to imagine everything else moving around the Earth. Because your explanations have to get more and more complicated to account for the fact that it's not true, right? You're trying to explain something that isn't real, and so it gets harder and harder. Yes?
Why did they think that the sun traveled on Earth?
Well, I will say this in their defense. Me standing on the surface of the Earth looking at the sun, it kind of does look like it's moving around us. Now, that's because of my perspective, but it makes a certain amount of sense at a baseline level if you're not paying careful attention and taking good notes and recording how things change over time. So this is, to the degree that it is a story, is about a person who did just that. He paid careful attention to what was going on in the sky. He watched the lights move across the heavens. He watched the sun. He watched the moon. He watched the stars in the sky and the planets that actually mostly looked like stars to the naked eye. And he took good notes, and he kept good records, and he compared and contrasted, and what he came away with was the conclusion that no, the sun is at the center, the earth is moving around it. And the problem for him was that the people who were in control in that part of the world, at that place and time, the people who controlled the armies, the people who decided who went to prison and who didn't go to prison, did not like that. His name was Copernicus. And his idea got him in a lot of trouble, and it probably would have gotten him sent to jail, except that he died of natural causes. So they didn't have a chance to send him to jail. But his idea kept getting people in trouble. Anybody who believed what Copernicus believed, anybody who listened to him about his scientific observations, they got in a lot of trouble. And some of them did, in fact. They went to jail, they were fired from their jobs, they had their books destroyed, a lot of trouble. Now, right around the same time as this guy Copernicus was sharing his idea with the world that the earth revolves around the sun, almost exactly the same time, coincidentally, the two things aren't directly connected, one of the oldest Unitarian communities in the world, in fact, the oldest one that is still around, was getting started. They were Hungarian speakers. They live today in what is today Romania. Copernicus was a guy in Poland. If you get out your map of Europe, those two places aren't that far apart. They were Unitarians like us. They have a different practice of it. Every version of Unitarianism is different. But they listened to Copernicus, yes. Natural causes, a disease, that not related to the fact that he was in trouble. Yeah. Okay, so we have a conspiracy theory over here. I'm sorry? Well, here, we're getting to the storiest part of the story, let me tell you. Because there's a picture on the screen that you can't really see. In one of the oldest Unitarian churches in Transylvania, which is the part of Romania where these folks live, in one of their oldest churches, there's a picture on the ceiling of the sanctuary of the church. Like if you came in here and you looked up and there was a big mural, which there is not, but imagine, right? They painted this on the ceiling of their church. And what did they paint? They painted the Copernican view of the solar system. A picture of the solar system with the sun at the center and all the planets, including the Earth, orbiting around it. And they even labeled it. It says, this is the Copernicus version of the solar system. They put this on the ceiling of their church, even though all of the other religious authorities around them said that not only was that not true, but it was a bad, dangerous idea that people should be punished for having. But they put it on the ceiling of their church. This, to me, is a reminder about our connection with the... Well, actually, we're getting to the end of the story. Yeah. A lot about stars today, less about animals. Sometimes that happens. A reminder to me about our traditions, openness to new truth, right? There was a new idea. It was different from the old idea, but there was proof, there was observation, there was data. And so they were willing to change their minds, and not just change their minds quietly, but pretty darn loudly. They put it on the ceiling of their church. Thank you for listening to me about this, we can debate its storiness, but this fun anecdote about stars and planets and the ceilings of churches. Enjoy your classes.
And bravery.
And bravery.
Oh,
invite you to rise in body and/or in spirit to sing together the hymn number 288, All Are Architects.
If you follow the course of a river from its headwaters to where it meets the sea, the chances are large that it will not appear always to move at the same rate and speed. Where the river narrows, or rocks or other obstructions render it particularly shallow, rapids form, portions that are challenging or exciting or dangerous to navigate. But in between these may be found much slower portions, where a boat or a swimmer might float along gently at a leisurely pace. Below the surface, however, the river still courses. It is only that here its speed has been traded for breadth or depth. At this time, we reach a portion of our own service when we are invited by the shape of this moment to rest. So now, in order that we might drift more slowly and let speed give way to depth, let us spend this moment together, resting in reverent quiet. Amen. So this is a story that comes from Nigeria, about a time long ago when there were no teachers, no classrooms, no textbooks. Everyone knew only what they had managed to learn for themselves by living. And if you wanted to learn something you did not already know, your only recourse was to find someone who knew more than you did and to ask them about it. Our central character in this story is Tortoise. Physically, Tortoise was awkward, and socially, much more so. He was gruff and taciturn and generally didn't like being around other people. But he had lived a long time, and he had learned much by living, so that the other animals often sought him out for information and advice, and the benefit of his knowledge. And Tortoise was sick of it. So he devised a plan. He took a hollow gourd, and he crammed all of his knowledge, all of his insight, all of his understanding about the world into that gourd, safely bottled up in there. He would not have to share it with anybody else. Then he took hold of the end of the gourd with his mouth so that the hole would be covered, and he set out to look for a place to hide it. Now, Tortoise is a slow animal, and his story is going to take a while to tell. So let's put it aside for now. We'll come back to him later, don't worry, and jump ahead to the explicit subject of this reflection. Math. Exciting, right? Oh, we're really going to pick up the pace here. Once, long ago, I worked for a year in the math department at Tufts University. It was not a glamorous job. I was their admin assistant, and much of the work involved very carefully typesetting the equations for exams that I definitely could not have passed. But one of the things that I learned in that time is that there is not one accepted, all-encompassing definition of what mathematics is as an academic discipline. Like a lot of things, there's easy consensus in the middle and a great deal of disagreement at the edges. For my purpose today, I'm going to use the good enough definition that math is the understanding of numbers and the things that you can do with that understanding. Different types of and approaches to math have been useful to different people in different societies, in different places and times. But as far as we can tell, and I think this is pretty intuitive, human interest in mathematics seems to start with counting in order to keep track of people, animals, and objects. Some folks who study patterns across human languages suggest that a common way of thinking about counting dates back long before any form of writing or settled society. And it's based on three concepts. 1, 2, and more. From here, languages grow to develop specific terms for at least the most common variations on more that they need to deal with. But for as long and as far back as we can document, and probably long before that, there have been people trying to puzzle out more complicated things about numbers than how best to use them to keep track of objects. Their investigations have led many different cultures in different parts of the world to arrive at the same or very similar mathematical insights, seemingly independent of each other. And some of these insights were revelatory in their time, yet may seem head-scratchingly obvious to us today with the benefit of already having been taught them by somebody else. One of my favorite examples of this is 0. The concept of a number that does not represent some set of things, but instead the absence of anything, is both crucial and radical. The ancient Egyptians, the Mesopotamian civilizations, and ancient Chinese mathematicians all had symbols that approached our modern concept of 0, although there are important ways in which the idea in those systems was not yet fully realized. Greek mathematicians borrowed the concept from the Babylonians. They literally switched over to Babylonian notation when they needed to use something roughly equivalent to 0. but they resisted fully integrating it into their own ways of doing math. There seems to have been a philosophical reason behind this. Even though its use in record keeping and astronomical calculations was recognized. How can there be a thing which is not a thing? The main contenders for the first true zero are the mathematical systems which evolved in India and those evolved among the Maya of southern Mexico and Central America. The modern zero, like the entire modern numerical system, which has been essentially universally adopted at this point, comes from an origin in India with significant evolution after being adopted by Persian and Arabic-speaking thinkers, only seeing use in Europe first around the year 1000 of the Common Era, so barely 1,000 years ago. And then with a long, slow period up until its final comprehensive adoption. So speaking of long, slow things, let's check in on Tortoise and see how he's doing. As Tortoise was crawling along slowly with that gourd in his mouth, Cat watched him pass her by, gradually. Tortoise could see Cat there, but he didn't want to have to stop and say hello and exchange pleasantries. So he pretended that he didn't see her. And he was working so hard at pretending that he didn't see Cat that he didn't actually see the large snaggle of roots in front of him. He tripped, and as he did, a little bit of wisdom spilled out of his gourd. Now, seeing this, Cat came over right away and gave it right back to Tortoise. You dropped this, friend. Say, have you thought about using a piece of bark to stop up the hole in your gourd? Then it might not spill so easily. Tortoise grunted a non-thank you. He hadn't thought of that, but he told Cat that he had anyway. That was just what he was coming to this tree to do. So he snipped off a piece of bark with his beak, and he plugged up the gourd, just as Cat had suggested. You know, friend Tortoise, it occurs to me that if you were to tie a vine around that gourd, you could carry it around your neck and wouldn't have to hold it in your mouth like that. I already thought of that, said Tortoise, even though he hadn't. That's the other reason that I came to this tree, to find a good, strong vine. And Tortoise put the idea that he took from Cat to good use and had a much easier time carrying his gourd because of it. He kept on crawling, though, until Cat was long out of sight. He didn't want her to see where he was going. Eventually, he came to the tallest tree that he could find. He thought that the very topmost branches would be an excellent hiding place for his gourd. He started to climb his way up the tree, but his body was not the best sort for climbing. And that gourd hanging around his neck, crushed between him and the tree, made the project even harder. And after much struggling, he tipped over and fell on his back and got stuck that way. Now, it may be that you think that mathematics and theology are strongly different spheres of thought. One is grounded in logic, the other in faith. One is generally held to be morally neutral, while the other is deeply concerned not just with what is, but with what is right. But across the history of mathematical inquiry, again and again we find places where these two things are deeply enmeshed. Pythagoras is a name that most of us will instantly recognize as having to do with mathematics, if only due to long-buried memories of having the Pythagorean theorem drilled into us. He, or at least his school, perfectly typified the intersection between math and religious belief. We know almost nothing for certain about the man. He was a philosopher in ancient Greece. Many of the stories we do have of him are pretty hard to believe. That he had a magic arrow from the god Apollo, which allowed him to fly through the air. That once, while crossing the river Cosus, the waters themselves greeted him by name. That Pythagoras once forced a particularly violent bear to swear an oath never to harm another living being again, and that the bear abided by that oath for the rest of its life. We do know that he seems to have been the founder of a community that we might today call a religious commune, with its own particular rituals and beliefs. It's actually ambiguous as to whether the several advances in math, astronomy, and the systematic study of music that are associated with Pythagoras should rightly be credited to him or to his community, which survived well after his death. But at least for the Pythagoreans, those three disciplines, the study of mathematics, the study of the lights in the heavens, and the study of music, were all deeply interrelated, all part of a system of religious belief. It's not just the ancients, though. You probably know Isaac Newton as the creator of calculus, the mathematical study of continuous change. Parenthetical here, Isaac Newton was a Unitarian. See me after class for the footnote on that one. If you know at least a little bit more than that, though, you probably know that there is some competition for that title between him and his contemporary, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, with a still ongoing debate as to exactly how credit should be apportioned between them. I trust that there are some among us who could explain the importance of the discovery of calculus, which today is an entire area of study in advanced mathematics, much more comprehensively than I can. But I think it's enough for you to know that the insights of Newton and Leibniz fundamentally shape our modern world. They are so essential to the disciplines of physics and astronomy, among others, that we would not inhabit the world that we do today had they never been shared with the world. But the dispute between Leibniz and Newton was not just about credit for calculus. In fact, it probably wasn't even mostly about that. When they were both alive, they were on opposite sides of a fearsome philosophical and religious debate about the nature of the universe itself. Both took as a given the existence of one God, infinite and infallible, who had created the universe. And both held that the universe, having been created by a perfect being, held to certain laws, which could be learned through reason, observation, and experimentation. The dispute was as to whether or not the whole of the universe across all of time required the intervention of the divine in order to unfold just as it should. The focus of this was the orbit of planets and other heavenly bodies. Would they go on spinning forever, just as they are, or did God have to adjust them periodically to account for minute instabilities? As Newton argued for adjustments, Leibniz held that this contradicted the very principle of infallibility. As he put it, mocking Newton's position, God Almighty wants to wind up his watch from time to time. Otherwise, it would cease to move. He had not, it seems, the sufficient foresight to make it a perpetual motion. Returning now one more time to Tortoise. Remember, he was stuck on his back, and he spent the whole night like that. A little while after morning, Antelope happened along, and seeing that Tortoise was in distress, she set him right again. She asked him if he had been trying to climb the tall tree, and he sheepishly admitted that he had been. "Well, friend, I am not so wise or so long in years as you, but I wonder if you might have more luck in climbing if you hung that gourd around your neck over your back instead of your front." With that observation, Antelope went off to go about her morning before Tortoise even had the chance to insist that he'd already thought of that while he was lying on his back, even though he hadn't. So now, with the gourd slung over his back, he slowly climbed to the top of the tree. High in the uppermost branches, Tortoise was pleased with his hiding spot. Here, all of his knowledge and wisdom would be kept safely away from everyone else. But something went wrong. It might be because the tallest branches are out of reach for a reason. They tend to be fragile. It could be because Tortoise's legs weren't the best for handling things like gourds. Or maybe it was because of the view from the top of the tree, so grand and so new to Tortoise that he was overwhelmed with wonder. But for whatever the reason, the gourd fell. It crashed to the ground and it broke apart. All of the wisdom spilled out into the world, so that there was no hope of ever collecting it all again and trying to hide it once more. And so it is, to this day, that the world is full of wisdom to discover if you go looking for it. The world is full of math if you go looking for it. This very building, our spiritual home, is a reminder of that. Mathematics is, at some level, necessary to all works of architecture, the ones that stand up for any length of time, at least. But geometry, the mathematical study of shapes, held a particular interest to Frank Lloyd Wright, the architect of our landmark meeting house. Here I am indebted to John Powell, one of the guides who leads tours of our buildings, for his summary. The equilateral triangle is a constantly repeating theme in the meeting house, often with two put together on a side to form a diamond. Wright had a fascination with regular polygons, shapes with sides and angles that are each of equal measure, like a square's is. He also pointed to at least two specific meanings underlying the triangle that made it an especially suited to a house of worship. First, it is particularly stable shape. Triangular structures are especially good at carrying weight and resisting stress. And second, that following the direction of an upward pointing triangle naturally lifts the gaze into a physical attitude associated with reverence. The mathematical connection between the landmark and this, the atrium wing, is continued as the sweeping arc of the far wall is drawn from a point in the landmark auditorium, the point centered on the pulpit there. For millennia, mathematics was an often secretive discipline, its knowledge reserved to a rare few and sometimes jealously protected. Today, its details are vastly more accessible, but its reputation remains largely obscure. As arcane as it may feel to the layperson, though, its insights are actually the unavoidable consequences of asking seemingly basic questions about the world around us, even as basic as, how many of that thing are there over there? And following them through to revelatory and transformative knowledge. However much or however little you or I personally resonate with the study of mathematics, it is indelibly a part of the free, searching, and principled inquiry that our tradition invites us to share in and to celebrate. Thank you very much for that music. I would like to invite forward now Mary and Rob Savage to share a perspective in support of our annual stewardship campaign.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We've been members of this congregation for more than 30 years.
In fact, I was once the past president of this place. So we came here originally because our daughter had been to an evangelical church with a friend, and it scratched my eyes. It was just so irritating. And so we thought, okay, we need to find a place that is going to be comfortable for us. Now, I have to admit, Frank Lloyd Wright drew me in to the old meeting house, and we also had to find a place that would be comfortable for both of us to be. We have different beliefs and different feelings about religion, And so we had to find a place that was okay. So I got to tell you that Britt, our daughter, thrived here. And in many cases, I think it really shaped who she is. So she did go through a lot of the classes, and she took the coming of age and then signed the book. She came over to me one day and said, "When did you sign the book?" We hadn't signed the book. So she guilted us into signing the book. It was okay. It was okay. We both worked in the RE programs. She's poking me because it's time for her to talk.
You said you weren't going to do that, didn't you? Yeah, so Rob and I both taught RE, many different classes. After Britt had finished what at that time was the equivalent of mind, body, and soul, she came up to Rob and said, "You have to teach that next year." And he did. I drove lots of high school students to what was then called youth cons, or conventions at different churches around the Midwest district. It was really important to Britt. And what's actually more interesting or more important right now is that this place and this congregation became very, very important to us. And we did a lot of volunteering. Rob is president, me just in other ways. And that leads us to our support of the church. This is the month of stewardship. And when we started, we lived in Eagle Heights. And we heard this thing about pledges. Pledges, we're at Eagle Heights, you know, we're grad students. That was quite a stretch to come up with a pledge. As we became no longer at Eagle Heights and gainfully employed, our pledges increased, okay? Now we're kind of in the fixed income range, but that's not a bad thing. We're pretty comfortable. And so we are now able to give money as stewards. And one of the things that we've chosen to do is to be sustaining stewards. We give the same amount, and we pledge to give the same amount year after year. It's an important concept that the church will have an idea of what their finances are going to be, at least part of them, for the next 2 or 3 years, so that the church itself can have financial stability. It's important to me that this place continue. All of the things that are here are very important in my life. Okay.
I'm all done. So thank you very much. Make your pledge, and we'll go.
Thank you for sharing that. I invite you into this time of giving and receiving, where we give freely and generously to this offering, which sustains and strengthens our community here, and also our outreach offering recipient, who this week is Porch Light, a service organization that provides shelter, affordable housing, and support services to families and individuals experiencing homelessness in Madison. There are multiple ways to share gifts this morning. Now, the baskets now being passed here in the auditorium for cash or checks, or as you will see on the screen, if sunlight permits it, that you can donate directly from our website, fusmadison.org. You will find our text to give information there as well. We thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we create together.
Each week we gather, carrying in our hearts the joys and the losses of our days. We hold our own pain and celebration together with those of the ones we love. We share these here, knowing they are held gently in care, in support, and in love. We light a candle for all those who feel isolated by grief, by chronic pain, by mental illness, and all others who are alone and lonely. To you we extend our compassionate hearts. We light a candle of ongoing lament for the violence which plagues our world. Fervently we yearn for peace here at home and around the globe. And we light a candle for all those joys and sorrows, hopes and dreams that remain unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. I invite you now to turn with me both inward and outward as we enter together into an attitude of meditation and of prayer with these words of blessing from Sean Parker Dennison, entitled, Letter from Our Better Angels. Dear one, we have received your letter, and we hate to tell you, not hate so much, but are a bit afraid to say. We cannot grant your requests as stated, but can only remind you of familiar things. First, faith. Faith in yourself and trust in others. We know it can be terrifying to be vulnerable, but only when you share your softest side will we be able to break through. Next, hope. Hope is not an empty fairy tale. It is the true story of all the times human beings like you have found a way to create the future, though you didn't know how. And of course, love. Love that demands you cherish all people, not just yourself and safety. Love that is not satisfied until every argument ends abruptly when one child says, "That hurts." There is so much to learn and relearn. The world teaches you to be hard, to negotiate and defend, to avoid giving too much and to the wrong people. There are no wrong people. You also are not wrong. And when you encounter the poor, the broken, the unhoused, and unwelcome, you are looking, if you pay attention, at us, calling you to answer your own prayers. If you want to change the world, first be sure you are changing yourself. Be tender, be kind, be at peace, Be all the things you wish for. Be your own better self. It isn't without cost, but it will be free. Amen.
Now I invite you to look at the screen or take out the single sheet for our closing hymn, Life Calls Us On. Let's rise in body and/or in spirit. Sing together.
In a moment, we will hear once more from the choir. It is a relatively recent piece by a Unitarian Universalist composer, the title and refrain of which is, "Love has already won." We live in a messy and chaotic world. We are, fittingly, messy and chaotic beings ourselves. And yet we have this yearning to understand the existence that we are blessed with, to explore and interrogate and divine the rules and patterns behind the chaos and the mess. May we grow in our understanding of this world and of what it is to live in it. This song expresses the hope and the aspiration that there is no moment, no circumstance in which love does not have the power or possibility to change life for the better. That insight may not be provable in quite the same way as, say, the value of pi is. But if it were, we probably wouldn't write hymns about it either. Blessed be. Go in peace, and please be at rest for the postlude.
Our postlude today features a special guest, you. So I need to teach you your part. We'll sing the anthem, and at the end, I'll turn and ask you to join us on these words and this music. So I'll sing it for you one time with Linda, and then I'll ask you to sing it, and after we're done rehearsing, we'll proceed with the postlude. Love has already won, love has already won, just as sure as the day greets the morning sun. Love has already won, love has already won. Be not afraid, love has already won. Will you sing that with me? Let's try it. Dan, can you go back one slide? Thank you. Love has already won, love has already won, just as sure as the day greets the morning sun. Love has already won, love has already won. Be not afraid, love has already won. Great. So you'll hear us sing that a couple of times. On the very last time, I'll turn and ask you to sing with us. Great job. Thank you.